What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Zamboni. I'm an herbalist and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of this community and showing up week after week. Thank you for hitting this little save button here in the corner. Thank you for sending this to a friend. Thank you for sending me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. Thank you for checking me out on Patreon. Thank you for getting a reading. Any of this stuff is super supportive. I thank you all for this. I super appreciate the ability to do this for y'all. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this week we have one of the more interesting aspects of the year, in my opinion. So the sun is going to move from Capricorn into Aquarius, right? So this happens every year. It's the sun ingress. Happy birthday, Aquarius, by the way. What's up? What's up? It's good to be here another time around. And as the sun moves into Aquarius, then this is going to put some emphasis onto the Aquarius things, right? And so we've got Saturn in Aquarius and we've got Mercury Retrograde in Aquarius. And that's what I'm really interested in this week is the not Saturn as much. We'll see Saturn next week. But the Mercury retrograde. So Mercury is currently moving backwards and is gonna regress into Capricorn a little later. But the interesting thing about this week is we're gonna get that sun cazimi. We're gonna get Mercury and the sun in the same spot. We're gonna see Mercury moving into the heart of the sun. Now we won't actually see that because you can't see anything under the beams of the sun. The sun is very bright, but as Mercury moves into the heart of the sun, this is the middle of the retrograde cycle, right? So we're going to start to, if we're, dealing with miscommunications and errors and mistakes and all these kinds of things that are associated generally with Mercury retrograde, then we're going to be sort of like thinking on how to move out of that in some kind of way. Although the station direct is conjunct Pluto, so that, it's still messy for a little while, but as the retrograde cycle goes, this is in the middle of that. And what happens here is Mercury sort of like, so whenever we're dealing with the sun, when things get very close to the sun, then the sun is the brightest object in the whole world, and so it shines everything else out. You can't see it, right? And so a lot of times this will come through, it'll feel like static in the signal, right? So whatever this planet is trying to do, it'll sort of like get just shined out by the sun. The sun is so bright and it just kind of like, if you're Mercury trying to do Mercury things, then and Mercury wants to do communication or transportation or whatever it is, right? Then, or wrestling also is associated with Mercury. Then these things can be like, they can sort of like get garbled a little bit and some stuff can get in the way. It's like not our best Mercury when it's under the beams of the sun like this. And then there's a moment when we hit the very middle and the sun and Mercury are in the same spot. And there's this moment of clarity. It's like, just like suddenly there's a bit of like, oh, and it's precise. And I've heard it described as a special message from the king before, right? There's been all this like weirdness, but then suddenly there's like a clear signal and we can say the thing super quick. And so in that space, then we get some good intel. You know what I mean? That's what Mercury is really interested in, is like sort of figuring out some information and a way to think with it and a way to sort of like speak on it, this kind of thing. So as Mercury moves into this space, then we're going to have some, and Mercury retrograde in Aquarius, right? So the station retrograde happened really close to Saturn. And so Saturn in Aquarius, what has Saturn in Aquarius been doing? There's been like Saturn is trying to make order in the world, trying to generate effective and efficient systems, habits and routines. When we can think about like rule of law, and rule of law that can be sort of like in the big world, like cops and stuff, but we can, and judges and things like this, right? We've seen some like Supreme Court and whatever been going on, right? Rule of law in this way, but then also like just kind of the rules that I have for myself in my world as I, like I have my morning routine or the things that like, oh, I'm not allowed to play on my phone until I've written for such and such a period of time, or whatever it is for you, right? So these kinds of things, this is what Saturn is trying to do. Saturn in Aquarius is trying to bring order to an otherwise chaotic world. And we've talked about chaos as being associated with that Uranus and Taurus. That's like kind of the long-term thing that's going on here with Saturn in Aquarius. Mercury retrograde, stationing retrograde with that Saturn, is looking at that Saturn stuff, this push to generate order and efficiency, and is like, well, here are some problems. Here are some chinks in your armor. Here's where there's some, it's not going to work as easily as you thought it was going to. It's not going to be as smooth as you had hoped. There's going to be some stuff that you're going to have to resolve, right? That's what Mercury retrograde is doing. So there's this plan for figuring out how to be in the world, parameters for making sense of the world that we live in. And there's some hiccups to that plan. And so that's a lot of how we see Mercury retrograde. Now, so as Mercury retrograde comes to conjoin the sun, then the sun, so if we think about Saturn as a manager, right, trying to manage efficient systems and this kind of thing, generating order, then the sun can be thought of as ideals. It's the sun is like the self, the source, the light. It's this little light of mine, right? It's the thing that wants to shine out into the world. There's all this like, I really want it to be whatever it is, right? And we can think about Mercury. So, the sun is the thing that's like shining all of the light that powers the whole world and all this, right? And so this can be thought of as like mind or ideals or something like this. Mercury is the first planet out from that. And so we can think about this as sort of like translating ideals linguistically, or translating it into, right? Trans is one of our Mercury keywords all the time. Trans anything. Then it's going to look like Mercury. So translation of the light and the thing that the source, this source piece, this mind piece that's like sort of pushing the whole thing. We can think of soul if you're into that sort of stuff, or whatever it is, anima, right? The thing that sort of pushes it, and then they're going to translate that into something that is intelligible to the other as well. And so to get, as Mercury retrograde deals with some mistakes or trouble or chaos or something like that, then we sort of get this moment where a moment of clarity where it's like, oh, I'm running into all of these problems, but here is the vision. Here's the thing that really matters. Here's the thing that really is going to drive the whole piece here. And so between this week and next week as well. So as the sun moves a little deeper into Aquarius, then we're going to get the sun conjoining Saturn as well. And so there's this desire to get the means in accordance with the ends, right? Are the things that I'm trying to accomplish, relative to those things that I'm trying to accomplish, how are my actions or my regular behaviors moving toward that? Or are they not moving toward that? Are my regular behaviors moving in a different direction, right? And so there's a moment of clarity here where we can be like, oh, here, like we can really get clear again on our ideals, right? So this Mercury cazimi is going to happen at 3 degrees of Aquarius. This is very close to the 0 degrees of Aquarius, where we got the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. We got a Saturn-Mars conjunction there. We're going to get a Venus-Mars conjunction there in a little bit once they move through Capricorn. So that's a couple of weeks out. But this is a very resonant area of sky, and it sort of speaks to the world that we are trying to create, this future world, right? And so how has it been going? We've been at this creation of a future world for a year now, right? It's a 200-year cycle that we're a part of. We're 1 year into that right now. How is it going? Is it close to what we had hoped it would be? Is it not close to what we had hoped it would be? We can look back on right. And so earlier, this early bit of the year, with the Venus retrograde and with the Mercury retrograde and all this, there's a strong sense of review of how it's been going, even before we can start doing 2022 super hard, right? So we're not really into the forward push of 2022 yet. We're definitely in a space of review. And so it's a time to review our ideals as we move toward the world that we're trying to generate. This looks like a really good time to have some honest review or reevaluation. It looks like a really good time for a strong assessment of like, how is it really going? That can be difficult and uncomfortable. Let's recall that this is going on in a Saturn sign. Let's recall that the sun is not particularly strong in Aquarius, doesn't particularly like it there. Although the sun does like a fixed sign, this is it's opposite to Leo, and so the sun is not super comfortable in this space. And so there might be some, some personal accountability that might have to show up here. And there's a deep honesty that takes sometimes. But if we do that, if we commit to that project and we commit to, especially next week, then there's going to be like, okay, so what are my regular habits looking like as we move on to the sun conjunct Saturn, then like looking at habitual exercises and these kinds of things in order to push toward the ends that we're actually looking for. This is a really good time to really define and get into what we're trying to do, the goals that we are trying to accomplish, especially with Venus retrograde as well. We're still looking at like what really matters to you, what are your true values, what are you actually gonna do, because those are because it's actually how you do operate. And we're at like New Year resolution time, so it's like I'm gonna do this or that thing. Like, is that actually viable relative to your the thing that you're already doing, the life that you're living, the sort of like identity of the piece here, right? There's a lot of this review and potentially difficult stuff that can show up here. But in committing to that, and then in committing to regular habits that will push you toward the goal that you're looking for, this is a really good time to get clear on that goal so as to generate the life that you're really trying to go for. So I've been personally experiencing these retrogrades as fairly uncomfortable, but if we can see it in this larger context of not even only just this year, this month, this year, but this longer 200-year cycle, we're really going through something important here and getting clear on how we want it to be for the kids who are 180 years down the line. How do we want their world to look like? Because we are currently generating that world right now. That, to me, is a meaningful enough goal to go through whatever it is that we have to go through. The vicissitudes of my life directly generate the world that those kids are going to live in. And so that, to me, makes it all worthwhile. Thank y'all for being here. I only talked about one aspect today. Make sure and tune in. I do dailies, so I'll be here every day of the week talking about whatever's going on. The nodes are going to switch this week, and there's plenty of fun stuff to take a look at. So thank y'all for being here. Thank you for sending me a tip. That's super helpful. I really, really appreciate all y'all who do that. Thank you for just being here, for sending it to a friend, for for smiling with my homies here. Usually I try to go out and be outside in the woods and everything, but there's like this much snow out there, and it was going to be difficult to get all the equipment out there and everything. So thanks for rocking with me again. I'll see y'all next week.